Well, Mountaineer Nation, unfortunately, I did it again. If you've ever tuned into one of my videos and you see my mouth moving, but unfortunately there's no audio, I did it. So I actually had this video recorded Sunday and then got 50 minutes in noticing my microphone wasn't plugged in, wasn't getting audio. So I was pretty pissed, and I didn't want to have to do it twice in a row. To be honest with you, it might have been a blessing in disguise. Sometimes I feel like whenever I do those, that's God sending me a sign that, like, hey, maybe you shouldn't post this video, because I did kind of go off a little bit. I'm going to be very fiery and brimstone once again on as we recap West Virginia and UCF on this one. And apparently acid reflux can cause like kind of phlegm in the back of your throat. So I was kind of like coughing throughout it anyway. So I hope I sound a whole lot better. You actually hear me rather than having no audio. And we're gonna do a great show for you. So unfortunately, our beloved Mountaineers. And I'm bringing this to you like an extra day late on top of this. So if you don't even tune into this video, like, I totally understand. It wasn't really a game. I'm seeing the views on games in which West Virginia gets blown out, and it's kind of fitting. It's like, we already know how the game played out on the field. To have it analyzed, what's there really to analyze? I'm going to do the best I can for you, and hopefully it's entertaining and informative all at the same time, because that's what I hope to bring to you each and every week. So West Virginia loses 45-13. And I'm going to be telling a lot of truths in tonight's episode, not going to be necessarily laying the blame at the feet of X or laying the blame at the feet of Y. But we are going to in the back half of this, because I think this game talked about bigger picture of things that we need to analyze from the last 10 months and how we should look at the rest of the season moving forward and into what I think is one of the most important off seasons in program history. So I'll be honest, to tell the truth, at the first part, I did not watch this game live. I was doing a lot of activities Saturday afternoon, out and about, helping my wife's family. And everybody kind of knows that whenever I'm not able to watch games live, I don't like text updates or phone calls or anything. It's kind of hard to avoid anyway, because you can't check social media during that time, because my feeds are all about West Virginia athletics. So it's hard. I'm also an athletic subscriber, so then I get push notifications from them. Like I said, I try and tell people not to message me or anything during that, but it's kind of unavoidable. So at one point in time, my wife did text me and said, "You don't want to watch this." And I was like, looking kind of at the time from when she texted me, I was thinking, okay, there's some time. How bad could this necessarily be? West Virginia can maybe make a comeback. Hey, who knows? Maybe they win this game. No harm, no foul on my wife for saying that. Like, it's not that big a deal. But then I get home later that night, and she, God bless her heart, she's watching YouTube TV, 4 games going on at the same time. And I'm like, oh, you're watching college football and I'm not even here. So I sit down and watching some of the 3:30 games that are kind of finishing up and really into it. Can't remember which game exactly it was at the time. But out of the corner of my eye at one point in time, I see the score bug come through and I see 45-13. And I'm freaking flabbergasted, because never in a million years did I think that West Virginia was going to lose by 31 to that team. 10 points, maybe even 2 touchdowns. Okay, I can understand it. By more than 4 scores, you got to be kidding me. So I'm watching this game back live, and I'm just thinking, I'm like waiting for the pin to drop. Okay, this is where it was, because it was a 14-7 game at halftime, and some of the moments that I'm going to talk to you about, there were points that were left on the board that West Virginia could have had in the first half to perhaps make it a closer game at midway through. And then in the second half, that's when, the dam finally broke loose, and West Virginia could not put 4 quarters worth of together. And the score just truly was, kind of unacceptable when you think about it at the end of the day. That West Virginia is a program, as I said, to a UCF program that West Virginia should beat annually in the similar fashion that Oklahoma did to West Virginia throughout the 2010s whenever they started into the Big 12 conference. So to lose in that form and fashion by that on the scoreboard, I've just about lost hope. Just, 5 minutes into this video. Very hopeful, optimistic. If you followed my channel for the last couple of seasons, I hope you get that vibe from me that I try to look at everything from a glass half full rather than a glass half empty perspective. Try and see the silver linings in kind of every situation. Try and provide that room of hope. Unfortunately, it's gone. As I think Morgan Freeman said in Shawshank Redemption, hope can be a very dangerous thing. And I mean, still to have hope in the program, yes, absolutely. And I know Rich Rodriguez is just, I think, concluding his Monday night preview show, so there's more context to be added for this season from this game, obviously. And like, I can't give that to you at the same time. I wish I would have had this video recorded yesterday. So like, again, try and think of this as if you heard this on Sunday or Monday rather than Tuesday. But almost losing my train of thought there is just like, if West Virginia can't beat a sorry team like UCF, who held the ball for 40 minutes worth of possession against Cincinnati, and I know Cincinnati's a ranked team and all, but to go up there and only score 11 points, and they didn't score their game's only touchdown for UCF until 2 minutes left into the fourth quarter, yet they went then the next week and scored 45 on West Virginia. Anything can happen in college football. I mean, Appalachian State beat Michigan in 2007, as we know. Anything can happen. But I've just about given all hope on this team. It's just a combination of too many injuries that have mounted up at positions worth, of highest of caliber. As I always say, you fight your toughest battles with your strongest soldiers. Well, Achilles and Hector are both dead for West Virginia. So I just don't know where they're going to find it, and it's just now, and no one got better. The bye week, I feel like players got worse. As I said, I think the formula in my preview show was rest equals health equals more confidence equals better play. None of that computed in Saturday's contest. I can't really give any sort of a passing grade for just about anybody up and down this roster. And we can kind of prove it by I'll give you one player for sure who I feel like stood out in this contest. But for the most part, I'm not seeing it. And now it's just kind of for morale's sake for this team. I think they have one more week left in them from moving forward. So let's talk about the game itself. Starting it off, first and foremost, quarterback Taven Jackson coming in for UCF lit the world on fire. I heard the three guys before the game podcast that over 400 yards worth of UCF's offense came off 15 explosive plays. Really set the tone well by Miles Montgomery, and he and Jaden Nixon on the day were a dynamic duo, rushing for over 200 yards combined between the two of them, and a touchdown for Nixon on a long 89-yard run. But Taven Jackson, I felt like, was the story from the get-go. Didn't look as if his ego was bruised whatsoever through having to sit last week against Cincinnati after poor performances against the Kansas schools. And then he came back in there and just took shots, just torched West Virginia downfield, wanted to attack. And I have no idea what Nick Taylor was thinking. I mean, kind of I do, but just why you make this decision. It was, I think, a third down play. First drive for UCF. Jackson escapes the pockets rolling left, but two men are already in pursuit for West Virginia. I think West Virginia was in a cover 3 coverage in the back end. That's why you saw on one side Michael Coates coming very late to the play, Jason Chambers on the other side. Taylor just left in the middle of the secondary. Domercant, I forget his first name, Eric or something like that. Taylor chipped Domercant. He absorbed the blow, went streaking down the field. Jackson hits him for an easy 6, really uncontested on the play. So I don't know why Taylor felt the need to just completely leave his zone in coverage to try and attack the quarterback. I know he's got a sense of a little bit of linebacker, likes to hit people back there, but I just don't think safeties really working out for him. I think that Nick Taylor, and you want to get him on the field as many snaps as possible because he's one of West Virginia's better defensive players, but you got Jason Chambers ahead of him. Same with Michael Coates, that he's not better than, but safety I don't think is his position. He needs to be more, I feel like, in a man coverage kind of defense, or just mano-a-mano with wide receivers on the outside. So didn't like that from the get-go. It's really slow to start with Scotty Fox, and then West Virginia switching over to Khalil Wilkins. That's really putting it lightly, I feel like. It was a good, I was happy to see Scotty Fox, from one Fox to another, get the start. Think he's better, and I think he proved it, in that game against BYU with his touchdown pass at the end to Cam Vaughn, that right now that Scotty Fox is a better passer. But, oh man, between both quarterbacks, Khalil Wilkins and Scotty Fox, what I conclude from that performance is both just weren't ready. Just aren't ready to take starting reps. Between the two of them, it was either the offensive line was so bad up front and couldn't give either of them protection in pass coverage, or the plays in which they would give average, and when I say average, more than just a second and a half's worth of protection, the play call and the play execution by either quarterback, they were either rolling left or trying to step up in the pocket and would run themselves right into a defensive lineman. Now, UCF had two pretty good defensive ends, as we talked about in the pre-show, Nigel E. Kelly on one side, Malachi Lawrence on the others. But for them to get over 5 sacks in this contest combined, I think some of it was on the quarterback. In Scott's position, he just either doesn't, he's running plays. He's not really analyzing a defense. I think, and this could be said of very many true freshman quarterbacks across the country coming up from the high school level, transitioning to the college level, especially Power 4, is, you're trained at the high school level, at least for, 95% or more of them. You're not really making too many reads. Coach is doing that kind of for you in the play calls, and at the college level, there's a bit of a step up in that regard. So just not understanding the defensive coverages, trying to execute the plays. Wide receivers were open. I'm serious. I saw multiple receivers on multiple times where I thought, that's when Scotty needs to throw it. And it's oh no, the offensive lineman's getting him crushed. And then I watch it on replay a second time, and oh man, he just, what was he doing on that roll? Or, you got to get rid of it earlier rather than step up in the pocket here. And the offensive line just wasn't very good on this day. Even a guy, I really have, I gave some praise on Kuz's show a few weeks ago, and Nick Cray, thinking he might be a building block that West Virginia can use with more development over time, that you don't have to necessarily go out there and break the bank, for 5 new starting offensive linemen for this upcoming year. But man, I'm kind of retreading after that performance against UCF. Cray got beat, a few times. One leading to the sack where he had 2 tight ends on both sides. I feel like trying to help him out, and he just got beat underneath. Speed rush to the quarterback and got Scotty Fox. Walter Young-Bear, Landon Livingston called in this game for 2 really pivotal holding calls. One specifically in the third quarter where I felt that's it. West Virginia has no chance of making a comeback in this game. Once again in the third quarter. I'm getting tired of saying that, I feel like. So just the quarterback play was typical. And the other thing with Khalil Wilkins is and it's some similar respect to Pat White, but I mean, Pat White being the great one of all time for West Virginia. Khalil Wilkins, I feel like, has either a deer in the headlights kind of feel out there right now, or kind of confidence is just gonna try and run and use my legs to the best of my ability out there, or it's just kind of like the Garrett Green kind of effect. Is if he doesn't see the first option, at the first, second whenever the ball is snapped, he's gonna take off and run. He's going to get himself killed out there the way he's doing this now through 2 games. And I just thought that there were times where it's okay, that's not an opportunity where you're just running straight into 3 linebackers or, 2 linebackers and a defensive lineman. They're just sitting there waiting for you to try and run, and you pick up a few yards. There's no threat with Khalil Wilkins of downfield passing whatsoever. So that's not going to cut it at the Power 4 level. So between the two of them, Scotty Fox and Khalil Wilkins, they're just not ready. They need to be more in quarterback rooms. They need to be studying, the system, getting more reps, learning. They should not be competing on Saturdays. That's if you want to win. If you want to see the kind of performances, but like you had this past Saturday, and you don't care whether you win or lose, but that's not fair to the defense. And I think that's kind of where, to flip to the other side of the ball, is what's happening with this defense. Because, they see these guys in practice. They understand. I'm not like a novice to playing sports. I knew, like my senior year of high school playing baseball, I knew we were going to be terrible because I saw in practice how bad, if you can't execute in practice, what makes you think when you're playing against better kind of competition out there that you're going to be any good. So that's the same kinds of things, is that this to use an old Neil Brown term, strain, that this defense only wants to strain so much at so many periods of times that they might take mental lapses, take a play off if they don't think it's coming their way or something or other. And I just feel, for 4 games in a row now, you don't get the kind of pressure to reward any kinds of sacks. I just think kind of Jamori Robinson is a lost cause on the defensive line. To expect him to be any sort of like double-digit guy in tackles for loss is not going to be had for this season. The guy who I feel like was the one unsung hero for West Virginia was Curtis Jones Jr. I think Jones is something that a building block player for this defense from moving forward next year. That you still want to have a great edge rusher. I feel like you want to have maybe like one more on, the opposite side, or at least to compete, like stack as much talent as you can. But to the progression I feel like that he's made from last year to this year, as a guy coming out of high school that I think was listed like as a 2-star recruit according to Rivals, and only 205 pounds, and you're expecting him to play what's really an outside linebacker in a 3-3-5 scheme. To be doing it at 6'2", 225, maybe with a little bit of room to run. Great athlete, great athleticism. I think got up and either batted a ball down or provided really a tough lane for Jackson to throw through at one period of time. I thought, okay, that's a playmaker kind of play right there. 4 solo tackles on the day, a tackle for loss. I really like what he's contributing. And I think you can rotate in Jamori Robinson and Braden Siders, but I think a starting bandit moving forward should be Curtis Jones for this team. I kind of want to skip ahead. I was a little disappointed also in Cade Hensley. When I thought West Virginia could have went for points rather than going for it on 4th and 13, right at the end of the first quarter at the UCF 34. But I guess Coach Rodriguez doesn't trust Cade Hensley to make a 51-yard field goal. So he couldn't even make a 45 or 44 later in the game, missing at the end of the half. So kind of disappointed on the prospects for him. I thought, coming out of Coastal Carolina that he would kind of pick up the torch right where Michael Hayes left off, but I don't think we're going to get that kind of, high quality ability. So it kind of speaks, I think, even more so to how good Michael Hayes was for the last 2 seasons. What a find that he was. Really pleased when West Virginia at the end of the first quarter took a 4th down stop defensively. This is when they turned to Khalil Wilkins at quarterback, and he turned it into points the opposite way. I think that's what gives this defense confidence, is when they get a stop, they get a turnover, and the offense rewards them with points. That's how you do it. But then later on in the game, West Virginia, this was in the second quarter, midway through, West Virginia gets a 4th down stop. The offense rewards them with a 3-and-out the opposite way. Now I know UCF, West Virginia kind of traded 3-and-out drives for the rest of the quarter, and then they had an opportunity at the very end, but Hensley missed that field goal. But you just would have liked them to score on back-to-back occasions, it felt like. I'm kind of done with Tykees Crawford at right tackle. There was a play there in the second quarter. I'm looking through my notes here of what I keep during the game. Malik Agbo, I think according to what I heard also in that 3 Guys Before the Game podcast, was the highest graded offensive lineman. Now, he didn't get a whole lot of playing time, but I'm kind of done with him. I think with another year's worth of eligibility for Malik Agbo, I think it's time to move on there at right tackle and give him a chance. And if this team wants to go up-tempo and still go warp speed and run with the quarterback, have a guy like him on the offensive line to go do so. So in the second half, again, 14-7 at halftime, you would have thought like, okay, there's still room for West Virginia to be competitive here. But no, I thought really when the game was over, there in the third quarter when Khalil Wilkins, again, rushed ill-advised outside the pocket right into a UCF defenders who were right there, popped the ball free. They return it for a touchdown, go up 28-7. I thought West Virginia had one chance back to really kind of respond. Third quarter, third down, 4 minutes left to go in the third quarter. I think at the UCF 44, and it was 3rd and 10. Scotty Fox steps up in the pocket, falls forward for a 6-yard rushing gain, so setting up a 4th and 4 inside UCF territory. Called back because of the Walter Young Bear holding call, set up 3rd and 20. They don't get enough on third down to warrant trying to go for it, so they punt. That's on the next series. UCF gets the speed down the sideline by Jaden Nixon. He's a home run threat and scores. So to then give up in the fourth quarter 10 more points to, UFC fighter Vitor Belfort's cousin or nephew or something like that. Just didn't feel good to that occasion that's what it's come to. But that's what I mean is just the defense now. It goes beyond talent, I feel like. And I think it's just manifestation of frustration. These guys haven't played together for more than one season. So now it's like, some guys are just doing what's best for them individually out there. That's where I feel like, I would love if this was a deeper bench offensively and defensively that West Virginia could go to other options, but I'm afraid that that's not the case. I thought that's what we were going to get with the hard edge, mentality from this coaching staff. But I think if there were better players in the second or third strings, that they would be going to them. But they see these guys every day in practice, and there's just not enough from last year's team retained in with the other additions that they've made. And the additions that they've made at some of these lesser string levels are just not Power 4 capable enough against better competition. So that's what it's all she wrote. That's what it really comes down, simple as that, is that they're, which is hard, a really tough pill to swallow. So I think now that kind of puts a pause, now 22 minutes in, to where we recap the game. So kind of talked about the different points and times in the game, the different players who really torched West Virginia or really let down West Virginia. For the game. The bigger picture that I take away from this one, because again, to lose by 4 scores, 31 points, so I get technically 5 scores to UCF on the road out of a bye is concerning of red alert levels for this season, to the point that you're getting a guy like me saying there's really not much hope down the stretch, and you just hope that you avoid somehow, some way. I don't know if it's to Colorado or one of these other teams that are in the top half of the standings of the Big 12 as of right now. But it's like, what's went wrong, or kind of let's recap the last 10 months. For the people who still, for whatever reason, don't think that the move off Neal Brown was justified, I mean, I don't have enough time here to kind of do that chronology of that one, but it's just like the accountability finally needed to be held up to Neal Brown of the shortcomings of 2019 through 2024. So yes, that was the right move to firing Neal Brown. But the second point being there, I don't still think that there really was a great candidate to be hired last year. Andy Codell, West Virginia wasn't going to go with a guy like Jeff Monken. They weren't going to go with, or I don't think there was any realistic shot. There might have been a last, second phone interview or something or other with Brian Hartline, but I think he's got a great gig over there at Ohio State and can see, it's his alma mater, that could potentially be his head coaching position somewhere down the line if he stays there or goes somewhere else and then gets enough head coaching experience and comes back. John Summerall, you weren't going to take a guy who had Troy ties, coaching at the G5 level in replacement of Neal Brown. So you thought with hiring Coach Rod at that point in time, it was the combination of what he did at Jacksonville State, but more importantly, the big donor support that he would conjure. And I think that he did have some of that before the House settlement kind of kicked in, and again, from the timing perspective of when he was hired in mid-December, trying to hire a same staff, you didn't know who potentially on the current team was going to stay and who was going to go with the multiple transfer portal windows. I think you would have truly liked to retain a guy like a C.J. Donaldson, Josiah Trotter. But, the players who had options elsewhere, made some paydays in NIL, particularly Hudson Clement. I know that was kind of debated in the court of public opinion last winter. So that's what you thought, is that with the big donor support of what Rich Rodriguez, he had the political backing, it seemed like that made for the right move at that given time. And the fact of that matter is that he was a program builder 20 some years ago, that he did it, taking over from legendary head coach Don Nehlen and then turning it into what he did from 2001 to 2007. I think Coach Brown and his staff, where I'll give them some credit on their exit, credit to Coach Brown, headed out the door, was that had helped him secure that 2025 high school signing class to give this staff a chance, in addition to then what West Virginia had to do to pull out what transfer portal players that they could get. Again, trying to, slap Band-Aids and duct tape in areas with the total volume that needed to be assembled to build back up this roster. And as I've said, I think that there were so many holes that needed to be filled on the defensive side of the ball just to get West Virginia to a competitive enough place that they could lose games at this margin. The allocation of resources needed to be put so much into, from a salary standpoint, into the defense, that they thought that with the offenses, with what Coach Rod was going to bring in, just his past track record, that build the defense and I'll figure it out kind of on the offense. And as we've seen, it coming from the offensive line was so much of a rebuild that then affected everything. It affects ability to run, it affects the quarterbacks and their ability to throw, which then affects the wide receivers, which then keeps the defense on the field way too long. It's just one big ball of suck that's affecting, because of one position group, the offensive line. So whereas I think, I'll stick by this of what I've said multiple times now, is I think that Coach Rodriguez should have taken the pragmatic approach instead of the principled approach. The principled approach would have been, as he did, in thinking that Coach Matt Moore on the offensive line wasn't necessarily living up, with West Virginia's players, to that kind of hard edge mentality, culture, those kinds of things. And what I didn't understand is, once West Virginia got Doug Nestor into the system, Zach Frazier became an older player, you got Wyatt Milam as a 4-year starter. West Virginia's offensive line, 2022 all the way through 2024, wasn't a problem. 2019 through 2021 it was, but those final 3 seasons with Matt Moore, I think he really turned a corner and put 2 guys into the NFL draft, drafted within the first couple of rounds. So that's what I just didn't necessarily understand there, is why that, if he also then, I don't think with added hindsight, maybe he would have moved differently, but to think then that you took what would have been 2 would-be starters, and Tomas Remek, Kyle Altuner, and who knows if you would have kept Matt Moore, would Johnny Williams also stay? So then with Nick Cray, with Landon Livingston, it wouldn't have been a complete rebuild of this offensive line, so you would have been starting from a better place. How does that affect the run game and all the other things that we've talked about? So I think that the pragmatic there, even if you would have just kept him around for 1 season to then move on afterwards, to keeping Coach Moore would have made a whole lot of sense for Coach Rodriguez, but he didn't go that route. And West Virginia, next point, looking forward, West Virginia's hit on some targets. Don't get me wrong, out of the transfer portal. I think Chase Wilson is maybe the pick of the entire offseason. Like, the guy really does everything for West Virginia right there in the heart of the defense. And you have to have, I feel like in a 3-3-5 or 4-2-5, you got to have middle linebackers who make tackles. And he's really done it all. Interceptions, calling plays alongside Reed Carrico and stuff like that. Like, he's been an awesome addition. Now, I think West Virginia's flopped on some others, most notably Robinson, who I've now, I feel like, piled on a little bit. That's the great gamble with transfer prospects, especially when you add as many as West Virginia did. You're going to have some ones who actually pan out, who maybe you didn't expected. You had some other guys, who don't, that you really were counting on, and then a lot of gray in the middle. So, but West Virginia was already past the early signing period, and still West Virginia went out there and signed some more high school prospects as we went into the spring portal season, and West Virginia added in the spring portal season. So, everything that's happened, I feel like, is just magnified because of this aberration of an injury situation for West Virginia. How many programs, I don't care, if you're a middle-class program like West Virginia or you're one of the top spenders in college football, how many of them could compete week in and week out in conference play with their fourth-string quarterback and their fourth-string running back out there? I mean, so the injuries, specifically Jaheim White, Ty Edwards, have been devastating to West Virginia. At quarterback now, I don't know what's happened to Jalen Henderson, and we know the Nico Marchiol situation, kind of. It's kind of spotty on the details, it feels like. But West Virginia is down to playing these players with this kinds of situation, all because of this stemming from the offensive line. Now, here's where I want to kind of take a pause, and this is where it might kind of get me into some hot water or some heat. And again, we're so far removed already from last week. Again, would have liked to have this said Wednesday. And, he I guess clarified this. I saw this on social media right before I started up recording this video. But I wish Coach Rodriguez would stop talking about the NIL situation in West Virginia. I know he's very folksy with the media, and like the media are going to ask him questions, and you'd rather him not, come off as like a super hard ass. But if someone's going to ask me right before that UCF game, hey, Coach Rodriguez, how much NIL money would it potentially take, for West Virginia to compete in the upper echelon of the Big 12? If I'm Coach Rodriguez then and there, the way I'm responding to that is, hey guys, I really respect you asking me the question, and we'll address that whenever the off season comes up, as we talk about, signing day, and then we can talk about transfer portal recruiting this time and that thing. But we're in the season. It's not respectful to these players who are on part of this year's team to be kind of talking about the money situation. Like, that's something that we talk about for the off season. We have a long off season in college football. So there's more than enough opportunity to talk about it. But no, he goes on and says, if we had 10 more million. Here's where I want to back up on this. If I mean, nobody knows. I mean, other than the one time I heard on a Raspy Voice Kids podcast where Stephen Ford, the COO of Country Roads Trust, that the 2022 roster cost $1 million. So let's just say that this West Virginia team, and I don't know, I can't verify this for a fact, but let's say that this West Virginia team, with what West Virginia was able to spend in an NIL perspective this offseason, was in retention and everything, was $10 million. Let's say it's increased from that to that, from 2022 to today. And now West Virginia has this house settlement, rev share operation where fans can make as much 501c3 tax deductible donations to the university or the athletic department as they want, but West Virginia can fund that and are up to $20.5 million. And if you're assuming, 75% or maybe more is going to the football team, that's now at least partially spent toward this year's football team, I would presume. It's not just all NIL dollars coming from what was previously, it might still be Country Roads Trust. So let's just say ballpark $10 million. I don't respect organizations like, say, the Pittsburgh Pirates out there, and that's why I've almost kind of renounced my fandom, I feel like, who don't do what it needs necessary to compete in the grander landscape of college or of the enterprise, in this case Major League Baseball, is that what the Pirates don't invest into their on-field product enough to even be competitive within the sport. But West Virginia is not so far out of the realm of, possible, and money doesn't necessarily lead to success. Look at Penn State, look at LSU, look at Clemson, look at Texas right now. Are they where they'd like to be at this point in time in the regular season? So we know that Coach Rodriguez, and whether it was justifiably or unjustifiably, I mean, the history, wherever you want to come down a part of this argument. But money was one of those same kinds of debates that went, and especially in the later years of Rich Rodriguez's first tenure, just became kind of a sticking point. And that's apparently, according to him, the reason why he left for Michigan. So, it's all coming full circle practically 20 years later. And that's where we're going to start with this, is that you just want more and more and more out there. I think a line has to be drawn in the sand. I think, again, as I've talked about on this channel not all that long ago, is that West Virginia had, I think 2 seasons ago, the second highest game day experience of anyone in college football. Little West Virginia. And fans are doing everything that they can to try and support. And like West Virginia as a university is going to now kick in more money. Again, the settlement, and it still seems as if Rich Rodriguez has enough donor support. We'll see how these next few months play out. In the same that one season hasn't necessarily changed the people who are writing the big checks out there. But I just didn't like that. I just don't like that it always has to, at the end of the day, come back to money, because I feel as if Coach Rodriguez, at least, through, the same thing happened in 2001, but this is where, I was very young at that point in time. 2001, I'm 8 years old. So for the older fans out there who know of that transitional period from Neyland to Rodriguez in 2001 specifically, that season, what was that? I mean, it's kind of hard to compare because we don't have the transfer portal like we do today, but what that was necessarily like. But I always think what's the best trait about a head coach is being adaptable and being able to take the players that you have, because injury situations happen and this, that, and the other thing, and you're able to adapt the players that you have to put them in the best positions to be successful. And whether that means to change your scheme, to change your play calling, etc., you go out there and do that. And right now, Coach Rodriguez is having trouble with that. And I think, coming to a head of it was Nico Marchiol, was that he was a square peg in a round hole, and he didn't really adapt his system to the players and Marchiol's skill sets and abilities, and still, through so many games. I mean, thank God we saw a deep shot on the very first play to see, to keep UCF honest. And did you notice on there, it was an underthrown ball by Scotty Fox up to Cam Vaughn. If Fox would have put a little more air under it, thrown it a little bit further, I think he hit Vaughn in stride for 6, but instead Vaughn had to come back to the ball, defensive back, can't play the ball. Like that. I mean, kind of where Carson was right, that was right there, taking some downfield shots. But beyond that, the quicker passing, getting the ball away from the line of scrimmage, using the pass as an extension of the run, and trying to get the ball into the hands of Cam Vaughn, letting him make plays, Jeff Weimer, so on and so forth, of there's more that could be done rather than I feel like West Virginia is just ramming its head into a wall each and every week. That, and I think West Virginia's running backs, Sincere Bowers got the bulk of the carries in this game, just not seeing the hole very well. From what holes that the offensive line was creating in this game, it just seemed like Bowers was just kind of running into the backs of his own offensive linemen, not seeing the hole where he needs to hit it. So he's not ready. I kind of feel like Hubbard and Sincere Bowers are kind of one and the same player. So it'll be very interesting to see if West Virginia retains both or who out of the two that they want to keep for next season. Because both are just kind of average so far behind a really bad offensive line. So it's hard for them to show their talents. But that's what we're getting out there, is we're getting, the spread read option look by a Khalil Wilkins who can't really pass at this situation downfield, or a Scotty Fox who, is just so green that he had a 4 QBR on Saturday. So, how do you make things easier for him? Some quick passes, get his confidence going up. There are some things I feel like the Coach Rodriguez could try out there, but he's not necessarily doing so. I hate that one play where it seems like he has the tight end go across to the flat, one guy go deep off a play action read, kind of rolls to the side, the defensive end kind of runs into like a running back right there, setting the block with the timing, and the quarterback's rolling like right there into him. So it's just like, I've seen that play a dozen times, right? It just doesn't work. So that's what I mean to say, is that I think the adaptability of Coach Rodriguez is not going to happen in 2025. Whereas he's going to take this entire year, still run these players, I'm going to run the same kinds of plays until it works. And if it doesn't work, it is what it is, I'm still going to be here next year. And then he's going to go out there and try and get players, take some of the ones that are currently on this year's roster, combine it with a large high school recruiting class, both in the transfer portal and from the high school ranks, and move forward. So that's where I've said before, say it again, whether Coach Rodriguez won one game or won them all, he's still going to be here for 2026. Nothing was going to change that fact from a financial standpoint. You're not going to move on to him. And just like now, there are so many other jobs that are coming available in college football. Maybe the best thing for West Virginia is to just suck but have stability, to be ahead of the game from a coaching, staff hiring standpoint, and they can go out there. And if Florida State fires Mike Norvell, they can make a second effort after Duron Parks. Penn State's, how many now of Penn State's high school commits and current players, when they become available in the transfer portal, can West Virginia just pounce on immediately? Same with Virginia Tech. Some things, maybe some dominoes are happening around them. That's why I'm not super mad. I'm not throwing stuff against the wall because West Virginia is losing. I'm trying to be calculated, trying to be logical about that. Watch some of the different content creators out there and how either outlandish they are, or just saying some things and beating their fists out there, whereas I'm taking more of a logical, bigger picture, 30,000 foot view of this, and I can see kind of what he's trying to do for this year. I just feel for the fans out there who have spent money and out there into season tickets, parking passes, continue to support this team, week in and week out, wanting to go to games. And it's your prerogative, it's your life. If that's how you want to spend your fall Saturdays, and that's one of my favorite things to do in my entire life, is to go out there and drink beers and tailgate and go to games on Saturday at Milan Puskar Stadium, no matter what. But I know how much of an investment it is, and for other people who are going above and beyond and supporting the NIL effort and this, that, and the other thing, it's just, I know how much of a life financial commitment that is to be able to do so. And if you can afford it, great. And if you can't, but yet you're still doing it, that is who I feel for the most. Are the people out there who die old, bleed old, gold, and blue, like I feel for myself. And I'm the one who's saying, raising the white flag, just surrender. Just surrender at this point in time. Scrap what you can, what pieces that you feel like make the most sense, what you can afford for 2026. And I'm telling you, West Virginia needs to go guns blazing in recruiting, being for this coaching staff. All eyes are going to be on you from here on out, because Coach Rodriguez and his staff can use the excuse all they want for the rest of this season that his staff did its best with what they had on the roster coming back and what they were able to pull in from the transfer portal. But this administration from here on out, once the final whistle blows at the end of the 2025 regular season is on, that's where this coaching staff now owns this roster moving forward. And we can't talk about this narrative, separating the narrative of, don't have the NIL resources, don't have it in recruiting. And like, that's where now I feel like the attachment of, who recruits the players now has to be owned. That price tag has to be attributed to the coaching staff. And that's what's going to be so interesting to see. Because there's so much I feel like that West Virginia still needs to do to be competitive program. I looked this statistic up earlier today that West Virginia needs to win one more game. They can't fall to 2-10. Again, would be record-wise. West Virginia has never lost 10 games in a regular season. But they have to win one more game for this to eclipse the worst 7-year winning percentage in West Virginia program history, which unfortunately overlapped with my dad's time in school. So talked with him earlier tonight about it, the Bobby Bowden into Frank Signetti years, and how he was even a worse coach than Coach Neil Brown. But if West Virginia finishes this season 2-10 from 2019, from when Will Greer and David Sills and Gary Jennings stepped off the field for the final time in 2018 to today, this will be the worst 7-year college stretch since that period of time. They're in 73 to 79. So West Virginia desperately still needs to try and win a game. Who knows? Maybe they do so. Coal rush environment this upcoming Saturday against TCU. But right now, I don't see it. I don't see what moves West Virginia can make the way that this coaching staff is coaching and the players that they have on this roster. West Virginia hasn't lost 6 games prior to Halloween since 1978. So it's almost been 50 years that a season has gone to this, world of shit this early in the season. So I think that hopefully, as Coach Rod said after that game in his post-game press conference, hopefully that's the bottom of the hole that West Virginia's dug himself in. I don't know about that just yet. I mean, again, TCU 5-2, Houston 6-1, Arizona State's ranked, Texas Tech's ranked. So, does it come down to Colorado? And what does that say about your team after the bye that you go 1-5 down the stretch after starting out 2-4? That's you need to set a good standard, I feel like, for all these recruits that you're trying to woo down the stretch here to say, hey, this is a place that you want to join in 2026. Because if you're trying to attract any 4-star recruits out there, they want to try and go to a place, yes, that'll pay them, but also compete and develop them for the NFL and challenge for conference championships. They don't want to play for a sorry program. And right now, West Virginia is a sorry program with a really bad team in 2025. But maybe that there's some light that you can see at the end of the tunnel. If that comes in the month of December or January, and then we're talking about a whole new chapter of West Virginia, or again, they pull some rabbit out of their hat in the month of November and win a game that maybe they shouldn't, or Las Vegas says that they can't. So I'd love to know your thoughts. I know it was bad. Didn't have a whole lot of brightness. So good, bad, or indifferent, you can leave them here on YouTube. If you've liked this video so far, please like it so more Mountaineer fans can see it across YouTube. Love to have you a subscriber to my channel. And I'll be back, hopefully, maybe during this week, going to do my preview of the men's basketball team. Had a secret scrimmage over the weekend against Maryland, apparently, allegedly, at least. And sounds like they had a pretty decent showing. Picked 11th in the Big 12 preseason media poll. So I think we have to preview this men's hoops team. Hopefully I can do that this week or maybe this weekend. I'll be back, record Thursday night for Friday, West Virginia, TCU for homecoming. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Let's go. Hail West Virginia as always, no matter what, and spot the ball.